But I would sit in her lap and she would ring people up. And I say in the book, she had a hairpiece that she would put in sometimes, and she looked like Bridget Bardot to me. I've got a really pretty mama, and she would talk to, we knew everybody. It was all farmers, all their wives, all their, kids. And we just, people came in there and stood around and talked, and, somebody'd be hanging out of the office, smoking, and everybody would just stand around and talk, and we had a ball, and people would be back there and watch Daddy cut meat. And it was fun. Oh, we loved the funeral home. That was the only other business there. So it was Corky's, Mom and Daddy's, and then the funeral home. And Emerson Meggs ran the funeral home, and he was so smart. He sang in our choir, and he fell asleep a lot because he was having to tend to dead, all that during the week, but precious. But the funeral home was on the way down. So like a mile and a half from my house, from where I was. My little mom and daddy still lived there, and it's surrounded by cows and mules and, all that, and hogs, farms on both sides. And Mama did not learn how to drive until she was 42, I think. And sounds crazy because Mama was raised on a farm and drove a tractor probably from the time she was 9. And she goes, I just never got my driver's license. And then she married my daddy, who's a worrywart, and probably, sent and said, you're going to kill yourself. And then you're not going to, you're going to run into something, Lucille. And so she didn't want to hear it. So she just didn't drive. And then at 40 something, she ran a business, and so smart. But anyway, so then she would say, Daddy would already be down the store, and she'd say, why don't we just walk down, see if anybody's in the funeral home? And she might need a pack of cigarettes or something. And so we would walk down to the store. We walked everywhere because she couldn't drive. Sometimes we'd catch the school bus when Beth would get on the school bus, and I wasn't old enough to be on the school bus yet, not in school. And Lucille would flag down the school bus, which was driven by Kitty Bell, who was one of her good friends, went to high school with her. And she'd say, Kitty Bell, can I have a ride? That's probably against the law. We get on the school bus, ride down with Kitty Bell, and she'd drop us off at the store. But we would walk by the funeral home, get into the store, and Mama she'd be like, oh my gosh, somebody's in the funeral home. Let's go see who. And, everybody knew everybody. So I've walked in. You won't believe how many corpses I've seen. And we would all just walk in and visit and see who's there. We knew everybody there. It was not, growing up in that was not weird to me. I never was scared of death, scared of a body. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in the funeral home. But it was, it's just a small town, and that's just what we did. It may not I know that sounds like something Andy Griffith, but they really didn't go to the funeral home on that. But we did. My mama's a talker and loves people, and my dad does too. And we would just stop by the store. Stop by the funeral home, then go to the store at the Kroger, and then worked at the little grocery store in Adams. My Aunt Lionel and Uncle Raymond asked him to come run it. So he was cutting meat in the back and really trying to have a grocery store. But, they tell me, I was a child, but back then farmers would charge their accounts. And I know that does sound like Andy Griffith. Charge their accounts and then pay when their crop came in. So there just really wasn't a lot of money in it. So my little daddy noticed how everybody, and I say my little daddy, he's 6'2", but now he's 84. He was always a tall, strong man. And you should have seen his arms back then. He still got good arms, and I got his arms. Hallelujah. But he can, cutting up meat, you should have seen him. Wiry, muscled up. Anyway, people started asking him to cut up their meat. And so he took a big jump and opened up a meat processing plant behind our house, up on a little hill behind our house. And my little mama did the accounting, and she took the orders and did all that and wrapped the meat. And my daddy butchered. And then we had both granddaddies worked in it, and my aunts and a lot of family members, and me and my sister, even though we were not good help because it was the 80s and we hot rolled our hair and we were sissy. But okay, so Lucille, people would come, you talking about a gathering place. They even gathered more at the meat processing plant than they did the store, because there was the area where they did all that, and they had the freezers and the stainless steel tables and all that. And then she had an office with a Coca-Cola machine. And everybody would come and get a Coca-Cola and sit around and talk. And old men like to come and just sit around. But my mama could skin a deer with a golf ball in less than 2 minutes. And people come to watch Lucille during deer season. And my mama is a very feminine beautiful, funny, darling. And I think about I think about her up there with the toboggan on because it was cold and she worked like a man. And then would give me and my sister cash money to go to the store, go to the mall and buy an outfit. We should have been whipped, Sid. But anyway, she would skin these deer and then my daddy would cut them up. And then during deer season, Beth and I they would need us to help. And deer meat is sticky. And I mean, and when you ask me, did I ever learn how to skin a deer with a golf ball? No, I walked inside because I could not take it. And I promise you, I know I was a vegetarian. They opened it when I was in 6th grade and I was so freaked out because I'd been around all this, but I didn't see like actual hogs hanging in a freezer and deer during deer season hanging in the trees. If it was cold enough, because they got so busy, because back then there weren't that many kind of businesses like that. And people came from Tennessee, Kentucky, everywhere for my mom and daddy to do their meat. And then cows. So my sister locked me in a freezer when I was in 6th grade and would not let me out for a while. She finally let me out. But I turn around and look at a hog hanging, they hadn't taken its head off yet. And I did not eat meat until I got away and went to the University of Tennessee in 1983. And I went in the cafeteria and was able to eat a hamburger. It took me a while. But anyway, and we had our own garden behind the meat processing plant. Mama had a whole garden. And then out at our farm, we had another garden. And so, I mean, I was raised like Little House on the Prairie. And then she would go into town once we closed our store. They would ride into town like Gunsmoke and get just, what you absolutely had to have: sugar, flour. I mean, she bought Little Debbie's every once in a while, oatmeal pie, and I never liked them, but Beth did. And I look back on pictures and Beth and I looked like ghosts. We were so thin, but it's because we ate off the land. We were. And deer season would open where I'm from on Thanksgiving Day, I think. It fell on that. I don't know. They were just always like, you got to work. And before that, we opened that, we'd have a big Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving, but we had to wait till Sunday afterwards because we had to work. And they would get people from the community that would help us because we had so many people coming in with deer. And then they had to hang them in the trees sometimes if it was cool enough. And then all of our dogs, we always had these stray dogs around because we had all this meat scraps left. So these dogs would be fat as mud. And Daddy never taught me how to drive because I didn't want to hear the fussing. And so I would back over a beagle and it'd be like, boom. And that beagle was so heavy, he would just get up and walk over and be fine. Well, and seeing telling it, and I know I've written it, but telling it to you, this is the first time I've ever really what's in that book. And it sounds crazy, but that's what we did. And my little mom and daddy, it was a successful business. They stayed covered up all the time. And because now, everybody wants to know where their meat comes from and get grass fed and all that. But that's what they were doing. And they put me and my sister through college and worked like mules for us. My sister sounds just like me. I think we sound like our mama. And I have been told that there's this little pocket in Middle Tennessee where they're farming people, that this is this, I don't know what you call it, but it's, I think a lot of Welsh and people from England. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think that's a true thing.